Hello, hello, hello. Is there anybody out there? Am I live? Is anybody out there? This is my first time using the StreamYard software, so hopefully it will work, or at least we'll have a recording. And I'm waiting for Zach Gallardo to join me for this debate. It's the third episode in the Showdown of the Sexes live streamed debate in the Polarity Arena, where I debate men on topics of the battle of the sexes, like what are men and women's natural roles in society, what's the true nature of masculine and feminine, and how do we want society to go between the genders, feminism, patriarchy, all of these contentious topics. And my goal is to debate these things with men in a friendly and mature manner, just to prove that we can talk about contentious topics without getting mad. So hopefully Zach will be with us soon. I'm Elisha Daeva, and I've been researching these topics for 30 years, ever since I read The Chalice and the Blade, which was about how, since the rise of patriarchy 5,000 years ago, we've been on a path of war and environmental destruction. But before that, we had a female-centric culture that was peaceful and egalitarian. So I've written a book about that. It's called Before War on Marriage, Hierarchy, and Our Matriarchal Origins. It's on Amazon. And it's really sexy and funny. So I hope you check it out. It's there's a lot of wow moments in it. And so I have a lot of research at my disposal to talk about sort of what the true nature of men and women are cross-culturally. And I also have a deep background in Tantra and polarity. And I have also a degree in human biology. So I have a perspective based in both biology and psychology and spirituality on human sexuality. So I've been really disturbed lately by the rise of the manosphere. There's sort of a new cult of masculinity that's taken over the world. And it's really disturbing. There's a huge backlash against women that's happening with a strange coalition of like right-wing Christians who have always, been nice people, but their claim that, God has ordained that men should rule over women and lead women and women should follow is extremely damaging to the world. And then they're joining with, left-wing polarity coach, gym bro types who are using the same sort of pseudo spiritual language to try to claim that women's true nature is to be submissive and men's true nature is to be dominant. So that's why I'm doing this, is just to kind of air these things and have discussions about them. Now, Zach Gallardo. He's a sex and relationship coach, and he seems like a really nice guy. And he's not a typical manosphere podcaster. He's, I think we'll have a lot of points of agreement. So hopefully he'll show up here any moment. Zach, please. Oh no. I might have to try to start this again so that he can come in. Hold on. Oh, wait, let's try this. Sorry about that, y'all. Try this. I started a new stream, so you should be able to come in. So while we're waiting to see if that works, I'll just talk a little bit more about my research. And oh, there he is. Great.
We've done it.
We did it.
Thank you.
Technology. It's a strain. And sorry that I'm sideways and you're up and down, but for now we'll just go with that.
I can swap.
Can you?
Possibly. Let's see.
Better. Great.
Okay.
Now we're side by side.
Good.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you as well.
Great. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into these topics, and your offerings, and what your perspective is on the masculine and feminine and our roles in society?
That's a lot of questions in one. Yeah.
I know.
Well, yeah, to start with me, my name is Zach, and I've been working for myself as a coach, mentor for about 7 years now. I started as a personal trainer way back in my early 20s, and then just found that I was having way more fun training people, in the life aspect and what happens between the workouts more than I actually enjoyed teaching the workouts. So I started moving into the more life coaching space, and I had probably 2 phases to my awakening, which I have a podcast episode on my full story, but in general, it was a woman who awakened me in a way. We were building a relationship. We met online after like 9 months of celibacy that I had. And this woman just dramatically changed my life. She opened me up to Tantra. She opened me up to polarity. She opened me up to what it is like to use masculine and feminine energy as medicine. And so I've spent the past 4 to 5 years of my life dedicated to studying those aspects. I've done some temple arts training through the ISTA program. And, I've studied up on David Deida. Carl Jung is one of my, one of the people I respect the most, his teachings, because polarity has a lot to do with, I think, psyche maps as well. So yeah, kind of a broad yet narrow scope of domain of mastery here. So
cool. Awesome. And so what's your perspective on like what is the core nature of the masculine versus the feminine?
So I'm really big on extracting like the energetics out of the things that we think are whole societally. So in the beginning we had man and woman. And in the modern era, and even in like things like the Bible, we tried to say that marriage was between man and a woman. And as I think we've grown and evolved, one of the things that we've realized is that there are energetics at play beyond just the normal biological representation of a human. And so with that, the real union is not between man and woman, but between masculine and feminine energy. And so I think that biology dictates what your dominant pole is going to be more often than not. There are some people who feel masculine trapped in a female body, feminine trapped in a male body. And I don't think that there's a disease associated with that. I think we just all have cores, right? And we need to be aligned with our core. So men predominantly masculine, women predominantly feminine, however. And I think that there are gender roles are not what we need anymore in society. I think energetic roles are what we need to start understanding in society. So when as a man throughout my day, I have my relationship with my masculine and my feminine energy, and I get to weave with myself in that field. But when I relate with another human, when I bring another human into the picture, if there's to be a spark of attraction, there has to be like a polarization that occurs. So no matter what energy I'm in, if I want to attract like a feminine partner and be in relationship with a feminine, then I need to choose predominantly masculine, which for me, to move into definitions here, masculine for me is the number one role is containment. So being able to provide safety, provide structure, provide a sense of direction, provide discipline. There are ways in which the masculine is also very penetrative and speaks and communicates through language, through words. So what I say is what is true as the masculine. Now, the feminine, if we're the containers as the masculine, the feminine is more of the current, the actual current and flow of life. So the feminine often has to do with expression, emotion, restoration, authenticity, receiving, and responsiveness. And the feminine often communicates in what she feels is true. So the masculine says it and it's true. The feminine feels it and it's true. And so I think that societally we've gotten lost and missed each other because we haven't realized that there are 2 forms and buckets of communication. One where there is a spoken truth and the other is a sensational truth. And yeah, they're different. And I think we miss each other in dating because we miss that aspect of communication.
That was beautifully said. I appreciate that. And I just want to question, like, where do those ideas come from? Because we know that actually infant boys, according to studies, are just as emotional and feeling as girls are. And I mean, are you open to the idea that those are sort of opinions and interpretations based in cultural assumptions? Because we also know that women are more verbal. Um, in terms of better at learning languages, sort of more focused on the verbal, um, like to talk more in a way. So I'm sort of questioning the assumption that there's something in the masculine about like speaking words and creating context, because it seems like that's kind of an area where women particularly excel. Whereas I think the masculine really excels in the spatial realm, like um, technical things, handy things, building bridges, engineering. I think those are some of the ways that the masculine really shines. And there obviously is some aspect of penetrativeness in terms of the actual genitals and the way they work. Although I will say that in the oldest tantric texts, the one that goes, I mean, tantra has a basis before patriarchy. So starting 5,000 years ago with the rise of patriarchy, we started seeing much different assumptions about men and women and what masculine and feminine is. Whereas women, sort of like at the dawn of patriarchy, still from the roots of the pre-patriarchal civilizations that predated them, like the Minoans, there was this idea of Sophia, who is the embodiment of logic and wisdom. And women philosophers taught male philosophers everything they knew. So there are different ways that we could think about it, and I think this assumption that women are emotional and men represent logic, may not be an ultimate thing, but more of how we've constructed it in Western society for the past 5,000 years. Because, as I was saying about the ancient Tantra texts, they speak of sex not as the man penetrating the woman, but as the woman engulfing the male, and mostly spoken of the woman on top and in the active role of engulfment, which, is a whole different way to conceive of it. And so we get out of some of these assumptions being universal.
Sure. Yes. So there's a lot of ways to, I guess, investigate some of this. One way would be like, would you say that you're more attracted to masculine men or feminine men?
Well, then we'd have to define masculine men and feminine men.
Right, and that's where we're at. And so what I
Right.
can see you saying is that there are ways in which the like current modern society has sort of possibly even reversed the way that we're supposed to perceive the energetics. But I'm already having a problem with you expressing it as men and women. I think that
Okay.
this is
Okay.
the number one sort of
Right.
like
Right.
thing that
Okay.
we have to
Yes.
cue is that it's an energetic. And so if we're talking
Right.
about, and so where we get to when we do that is yes, you could say I've arbitrarily defined masculine and feminine, but it's kind of like arbitrarily defining a rock. And like, if I say that you're a rock, we're saying, you're like, well, what does that mean? Well, I'm defining
Right.
a rock as strong and sturdy and immovable and, reliable. And it's like, well, how do you get to that definition? Was it arbitrary? No, we're pulling and extracting the energetics of an actual rock. And so when
Right.
you go really far back before there was even society and you extract the energetics of men as they were
Right.
operating in tribal aspects, and then you extract the energetics of women, by necessity, by design, we have that sort of testosterone instinct, biological instinct that is to hunt, that is to kill, that is to go to war, that is to fight, protect. And this is shown even in modern society. When a man doesn't have those things online, we kill ourselves at a really, really higher rate than women because we don't have the vehicles necessarily, and we're getting so many mixed, confusing signals about what it is to be an expressive masculine man. So I think when we root it down, when we pull the energetics from the thing, so it's like I'm going to call you a rock because I know a rock. So I'm going to call you masculine because I've taken the energy out of man, and we can now all embody masculine traits, and it doesn't have to be like a bad thing, or even if it's a societal construct, good. there are many good aspects of it that I think we're trying to understand.
I totally agree. I'm not making any value judgments. I'm just asking questions to call into question whether some of these ideas about masculine and feminine are universal or if they're cultural. So for example, this idea of men as needing to hunt, well, we now know just in the last couple years that actually women hunted too. So now that we have the technology to analyze ancient skeletons, we find that women are actually hunters as well. And these instincts to kill and go to war, now these are very recent things in our history. Like there was no war before 5,000 years ago, and very little violence. So those things came with patriarchy, along with genocide and rape and class oppression, the oppression of some people over others. And that's not because the masculine is bad. It's just because we're in an out of balance state where there's no balance between the masculine and feminine or men and women. And because we're now tracing descent through the male line, meaning, the son of a father of a father of a father. And when we do that, we have to suppress sexuality, at least for women, because in order to know who the father is, we have to, control sexuality. And once we do that, we get into realms of psychopathology. So that's where the war and the violence comes in. So those things aren't necessarily core instincts. But I agree with you that testosterone is the biological underpinning, and that it does mean that men are stronger and more aggressive, more potentially aggressive, if there is, a need to be aggressive or a desire to be aggressive, which is kind of enhanced by society allowing that and not preventing that. I think the core nature of the masculine is sort of athletic prowess. That's what I think of as the masculine, is because of this like testosterone and this physical ability. That's like what I'm really, really think
Great.
of as the core masculine.
Yes, I love this, and I can work with that. So,
Yeah.
and from athletic prowess, what are we going to retrieve? Well, we're going to retrieve like discipline from that. I think because athletic prowess, you have to be focused, you have to be disciplined. There has to be if you have athletic prowess, you can't necessarily be crying on the basketball field if you didn't shoot your free throw correctly. So there's this stoicism element that maybe comes from athletic prowess as well. So yeah, but you would say that I would say that testosterone is the marker for masculine energy, estrogen being the marker for feminine energy. And I think that and we see this because men with less testosterone, we would generally claim as being a little more feminine. And but yeah, this nature of like this idea of, patriarchy sort of fucking it all up, because I hear this a lot, and I have so many curiosities about it, because yeah, I agree that like masculine in power is not always healthy, but I would say that humans in power are not very healthy. We're just not good. You ever seen a woman in power too? She's just as fucked up as the man. Like I've never seen like there's good uses of power from good people, but it doesn't matter if it's masculine or feminine holding it. We're all like equally adept at being corrupt. Though I would say the masculine is definitely has attuned to more violence because we are the natural predators.
Right. Well, actually, like the women who have risen to the very top in patriarchal societies, the Hillary Clintons and, Margaret Thatchers, everyone who rises to that level is going to only get to that point because they're corrupt and because they're warlike. Whereas if you look at the data for women leadership in terms of CEOs and mayors and, lower levels of politics, women are actually more peaceful and effective leaders, not just for the bottom line, but keeping everybody happy and tending to form coalitions and being a lot less corrupt, like on many levels. And the more successful they are, if women have, if there's more women involved. If one woman is alone and she has to prove herself with a bunch of guys, she's going to be more masculine like that. But the data shows that groups of women, and back before patriarchy, like the groups that survived into the modern era, to be recorded by history, were peaceful with a grandmother council. And I think the idea of grandmothers is kind of the core thing too, because after we go through menopause, we're sort of like the only adult human beings who aren't driven by our reproductive urges, which are, which talk us into doing things that aren't necessarily good for everybody, but maybe they're good for our genes. And so, oh, and I wanted to reply to another thing that you said about men committing suicide more often. I think the statistics I've seen is that women attempt it more often, but that men are better at actually carrying through with it, with that kind of violence. And I believe that the statistics show that the reason why men are committing suicide more often these days is that, for one thing, as the patriarchal roles are breaking down, men are confused about what they're supposed to be doing and feel like their roles have been taken away. And because men are not encouraged by patriarchal culture to form, relationships with each other, to express their emotions, to ask for help, to get that kind of help from each other. And that is the thing that supposedly keeps people happy, is their community.
Yeah. And I feel a desire to say this. There's nothing that feels more invalidating as a man as putting your hand up and saying, like, hey, I am struggling with life and with this and that. And then to have women basically tell us that, again, it's our fault. That when we hear it's patriarchy that does it, what I hear is the overarching masculine field is causing you to feel that way. And like, it's like, well, that doesn't really help me necessarily. And the more that you break down patriarchy, the more that the more men are probably gonna commit suicide. Because one of the things that I've noticed is that, like, it is, the dating field right now is fucking hopeless for men in a lot of ways. Like,
And women.
more men have checked out than women have. More men are single and sexless than women are. And we have this, like, it's because at the deep core subconscious level, women desire and crave like a little splash of like masculine and usually dark masculine energy. You like to feel safe and protected by knowing that we're dangerous at the end of the day. There's a spiciness, a sexiness to that. My man would kill another man, but he keeps me safe. He likes me. It's hot. And so, like, but a lot of men, we're trying to be like, okay, you don't want us to be toxic masculine. Great. I'll be nice then. And then you don't like us for that, because we've castrated a lot of men as we've tried to dial back the pendulum on we're a little too masculine, like a little bit too much with it. But it's more we're just not healthy masculine, or we don't have healthy feminine to balance, which is what I would say. Because the men with good feminine, we like them. The most masculine man, we want him to also be the most feminine man. So that way he's got the strong union within himself. But it's I'm watching just, and like clients as well, like men who are like, bro, what am I supposed to do? I try to be masculine. They tell me don't do that. It hurts them. It oppresses them. Okay. And then I try being nice and I'm in the friend zone forever. And it's like hopeless. And especially if you go on dating apps, I don't know if you've seen the data on dating apps, but it's like the same, like 5 to 10% of men get swiped on by every woman. Everyone else is a fucking ghost. And so I think I've found my way to some top of the dating value market or whatever, because I'm articulate, I'm attractive, I take care of myself, I'm in purpose work, I can speak well. But like, so what I look at is I'm like, come on, men, there's very specific, few nuanced and things you have to do to like meet women these days. And I think that deconstructing patriarchy just isn't necessarily the route that a lot of men need to go through, though I understand what the aim is. So it's difficult.
It is really difficult. And thank you for expressing all that. And I have an enormous amount of empathy for men and what this total breakdown and deconstruction, is feeling like. And because I wrote, a book on the origins of patriarchy that's based in ancient cultures, I make sure to say that it's not about blaming men at all, and that patriarchy is a system that is created and perpetuated by both men and women. And in fact, in my life, more women than men have actually sort of perpetuated it on me. And it hurts men almost as much as it hurts women. I mean, men aren't like killed and beaten every day and sort of prevented from creating income. Um, the woes that women have had to put up with for the past 5,000 years are extreme. but it hurts men almost as much, first of all, by denying men access to their emotions, which is what leads to suicide and depression. And by it basically makes men and women like half a person, whereas like you and I, let's say, are like feel like really embodied and whole because we're open to both our feminine and masculine sides. But for the most
Mm-hmm.
part, it's like separated those things so that most people are like half a person, and that's the biggest damage that it's done. So I believe that this conversation about patriarchy is crucially important for
Yes.
both of us for healing, so that we understand the dynamics, and the core dynamic that it comes down to is about paternity, which means the suppression of sexuality, which is our natural urge. And when you suppress a natural urge, it leads to, psychological dishealth, because that's our core nature. And so by getting out of, so I believe that by, first of all, understanding these dynamics, we can deconstruct them in ourselves, and forgive ourselves. And also, it's all about trauma. Like, it's a trauma response. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what you were describing about women who want like a violent guy is a trauma response to 5,000 years of patriarchy, of needing protection against violent men. Go ahead.
Mm. Yeah, well, on that, everything else I'm agreeing with. Just that particular point, I don't think so. I think, I mean, I mean, so in order to do that, this kind of takes the claim down to every point of attraction is as a result of trauma, because you could go that far. Like, polarity as an actual point of attraction is only a result of the fact that there's contrast, and that
Mm,
contrast is calling us to integrate the other person as a component we don't have in ourselves. So if
mm.
I'm really, really attracted, and I'm going to use a hyperbolic example, but like
Okay.
pedophile attraction, like the
Okay.
attraction to children, is
Mm,
often because what is happening is these people have not had a chance to integrate the inner child within themselves, and they
mm,
missed a component of puberty, of like erotic expression and erotic awakening. So now
mm,
they're attracted to the piece of themselves that they need to integrate.
mm,
And so, yes, for a woman who y'all don't naturally like have intense violent predatory instincts like we
mm,
do,
mm,
being attracted to that, I think, is just calling that into yourself, because you need to realize that you're a dangerous murderer in order
mm,
to like be integrated as a human, that you have the capacity for that.
mm.
So, but on every other side, I would totally agree that this conversation is important and should be deconstructed like we're doing right now.
Yay. Oh, and by the way, on nice guys, I agree that this whole concept of niceness can be sort of unattractive, because it feels like not authentic, um, or men are like trying to be a certain way to get something. I believe that there's a huge range in between sort of like a tepid nice guy who's kind of weak and won't express his opinion on one hand, and on the other hand, like a douchebag who's dominating others. Like, I believe that there's a massive range, and we've been given these very narrow choices on either end that are really unappealing. And so many women are conditioned, like I said, by patriarchy, into choosing those kind of bad boys. And I think that's sort of the appeal, in the same way that I read statistics that a lot of women have rape fantasies, which is
Yes.
really sad. And it's believed that perhaps, well, there are two things. One is that women who in patriarchy were turned on by rape would have survived and passed on their genes, because if they were lubricated, they wouldn't have died from internal injuries as often. And because women have been conditioned by patriarchy, because of paternity certainty, to repress their sexuality and have to pretend that they're a nice, unsexual girl in order to attract a man who will provide for them, because they haven't been given the opportunities to provide for themselves. Unlike pre-patriarchal society, where women were in charge of resources, so there was no need for a man in terms of providing. Everyone provided for each other. The whole clan provided, everyone provided for everybody else. So because of that, women have, what was I saying?
The
um,
the rape
about
fantasies
rape
being,
fantasies.
yeah.
So if we feel like we don't have a choice in it, and we're just like swept away, then we can let go of this guilt that we've had, this like shame and guilt, all this sex shaming, slut shaming, guilt. If we're raped, then we won't be blamed for it, because we resisted or whatever. So I think all of that. But
Yeah.
I'm attracted to men who have a good mixture of masculine and feminine, guys like you who like I would say that switch between the roles like as the situation demands. So if I'm like on a roof doing shingles, I'll probably like, you know, be more in my masculine. And if I'm like on the dance floor dancing in a skirt, I'll probably be in my feminine. And I like men who are kind of a switch so that we can have a constant dance as to who's leading, who's admiring. To me, that's a lot more interesting than fixed roles. Like you're on top, you know. So I like men who can dance. I like men who can wear jewelry. Like those things are considered feminine, but that's just in our culture. Like in Arab culture, where you
Right.
argue men are very masculine, they wear jewelry and they shake their hips.
Yes. Yeah, and I can see that. I do think like I remember growing up and like I remember one of the weirdest conversations I ever had with my dad was he was like, Zach, I was like a junior, senior in high school, never had a girlfriend, never had sex. I was very late bloomer, very shy kid. My dad was like, Zach, I just gotta ask, are you gay? And it was like this whole like conversation, and I was like, what? Huh? Like, and I remember my mom always being like, Zach, you're just a little more sensitive than other guys. Like, just trust me, this will be fine when you get older. It's like emotional availability. But my dad, are you gay, son? It was like he was
Oh,
ready to like. So it is odd on that, and just just to dial it back though, are you hold on, because you really switched topics there. You telling me that you are not attracted to like a man who is able to like you don't have there's no sexual desire at all for a man to like dominate you a little bit in the bedroom?
so I can occasionally go there, um, and I'll play that game like once or twice. I'll try anything twice. Like with a guy, if he wants to do that, I can be turned on by that. And then after like once or twice doing that, like that feels like a game to me. It feels like a mask. It feels like a role play, which is
Great.
fun. It's a role play. And then it's like, all right, let's drop the masks and play something else. Like let's play like intimacy and more like upper chakra kind of relating to each other. Or let's play I'm in
Hmm.
charge, and you can sit back and receive.
Yes, all of that sounds great. And I think so. Yeah, I really like that you brought in the chakras, because I do think that you can have intimacy depending on like
Hmm.
where you want to reside. And energy sex being like it's like pure third eye. It's like, oh, we're turning
Hmm.
each other on, we're just looking at each other.
Yeah.
But there's also the erotic blueprints, if you're familiar with that model, which is like a personal orientation on how you express erotic energy. So you have the sexual, the sensual, you have the energetic, you have the shapeshifter, and you have the kinky.
Oh.
And these are like the 5 ways in which our blueprints. So I'm an energetic mostly, and I think it's
Mm,
because I got awakened into tantra, and so I
mm,
feel and I can weave with energy, and so
mm.
like I can kind of like orgasm without ejaculating, which is like a really interesting
Oh,
experience because it's all energy for
amazing.
me.
Wow.
But
Good job.
so maybe that can flavor right the type of expression that you like in the bedroom. But and one other thing I'd bring up is that I think there is especially with the work that I do, I think there is a component of medicine in terms of how
Mm,
we choose to express these things as a healing modality. So
mm,
like, yeah, if a woman just really wants to be choked, dominated, and taken, that is like healing medicine for her. And if we have to continue to do that, like she needs a hit of,
mm,
heroin or something, then yeah, I think
mm,
that's causing a problem. But there is no kink, no person that I would shame, nobody I would say that they're bad for desiring something. And I would
mhm,
definitely, and if it is due to trauma, fuck it. I don't let's heal it then through its expression, right? I would rather not suppress desire. And I would rather, because again, some people say that I take away sovereignty from women. I had a weird comment the other day that said that, and I'm like, I only want to empower people to be as sovereign as possible in their
mm,
relationships, which is why I teach the sort of like dual pole aspect
mhm,
of polarity.
mhm. That's awesome. And, I've been really thinking about this kink thing. It's become, I would like in my circles now, I would almost say that like the sex positive community is almost kink centric. Like all of the sex positive events and storytelling events and stuff I've been to have been like pretty much all kink. And maybe that's a need to like unshame it and normalize it. And I don't want to shame anything, although my gut instinct, I don't want to be choked at all. And my gut instinct is that that's something to be healed and that that's a trauma response. But I don't, not about shaming it. Is there a way that we could finally heal that and not have to experience that every time, you know?
Yeah. And so on one aspect, it's to think that you shouldn't be experiencing it means that you would call it a bad thing. And I don't think it's a bad thing. Are you familiar with the book Existential Kink?
I've never read it. I've seen it.
It's a fascinating like perspective on our situations and that and like our life experiences. So let's say you're repeating this pattern, right? It's like, oh my God, I'm broke all the time. It's like I have no money. I can't ever afford the things I want to. Existential kink would say that there is a component of that experience that's actually kind of kinky to you. And you kind of like the feeling of being helpless and hopeless. And oh no, I have no money. Who's going to save? It's this, right? So
It's comfortable.
Yeah, there's a familiarity but it's also kind of hot. Like I recently came to a realization that I enjoy kind of being financially choked, which is like oh shit, where's my next dollar going to come from? I hope I can find it. And it's like there's like a, oh shit, I got to pay these bills, but I can't pay them. Oh, and then the money comes through. And then I start paying everybody. The bills get paid. It happens right on time. It feels so good. Oh my goodness gracious, that was a close one. And there's kind of like so of course I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. And it's not responsible, quote unquote. But you know, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 7 years and I kind of like the thrill of the hunt. And so, you know, yeah, it's not always to own your kink and to express it is kind of like the pathway to healing it, if you ask me.
I like that. And maybe you're just an adrenaline junkie. So it's like, am I going to make it? I just made it. You know?
Perhaps, but I would never go skydiving. So for what that's worth.
Me neither. And I feel
or roller
incredibly
coasters.
relieved. Yeah, fuck that.
I fucking hate roller coasters. My life's already.
Exactly.
I'm a Scorpio. I experience things intensely.
Oh, are you? Okay. I think there's going to be a high percentage of Scorpios on this show if I can continue to find men who are willing. I'm Scorpio rising. What's your Venus in?
Also Scorpio.
Oh, wow. Intense.
Very. Yes. There's a high cost to being with me. Also a high value, but you will be radically changed.
We'll put out a little plug for your
one way or another. Or future clients. It's the same thing. All I do is build relationship containers. So
I love that. How do you, what does that mean exactly? Like you coach somebody to create a safe container about what they're looking for?
Yeah, in business or in romance and partnership, what I do is construct a container for the relationship, because I truly believe that relationships are a third entity that needs to be like nurtured and watered and it's also distinct. So, you know, I'm in a relationship with you. That third thing may look different, right? It's like we may be great individually, but then we come together and either it looks good or looks bad. And so we have this thing. So how do you actually construct a relationship, especially if you want to construct something close to a marriage and you want it to take you really far? How do you do that? And so that's just the process that I bring people through. So if we're in a coaching relationship, I'm going to, you know, this is the way we're going to build the relationship. There's going to be types of dynamics. I'm going to hold you for this long, right? A few months. We're going to like enter a space together, and it's going to have an opening, and it's going to have a closing. And you know, relationships, same way. I mean, it may sound ridiculous, but I'll write documents and be like, here is my theory on our relationship, and here are the things that I see that we're going to be able to clear and heal together. These are the ways I want to grow with you. How does that look? And I'll propose, right? Like the traditional propose. I won't necessarily get on one knee, but I will deliver it with my heart and say, you know, do you want to build a relationship with me? So
I love that. That's great. Is there anything else we want to talk about? Do we have any unclosed files?
Possibly. I mean, this was really nice. I really want to be able to speak about the patriarchy the
Mm,
way that you and other women I hear speaking about it,
mm,
because I I'm really good at finding like connecting threads. I'm really
mm,
good at bringing something in and embodying it
mm,
so I can tell the story of it. But I
mm.
haven't been able to figure out what the hell y'all are talking about when you say the patriarchy. Like I can't, and I think a lot
Okay.
of men are confused too.
Right.
And I know that I'm
Right.
like, because it's not my dad didn't do this to me. Is it the boogeyman societal construct? Is there this pulsing entity of masculine energy that no particular man is like, nobody actually did anything to you. It's all this like belief of like, oh my God, there's this societal construct. Like I wake up, I have a smoothie, I go for a walk, I respond to DMs, I talk to clients, I dance, I try to train, I try to build my relationships, I try to pay my bills. There's no spooky, there's no patriarchy like yes, when if I watch TV, if I watch the news, I'm going to see examples of masculine energy that sucks. And you know what? Fine. But why are we looking at news anchors to be our elders? Why are we looking at presidents to be our elders? Maybe, I think we're awakened enough at this point to know that they suck as far as like frameworks for health and integration. So I'm like, and then you look at the actual other underdeveloped countries that are struggling to like get their
Mm,
basic needs met, and we have such a privilege to be talking about like the patriarchy. It's such a privilege to be so
mm.
free and have such a high degree of freedom of speech to be like, I'm oppressed. It's like, okay, well, now we're going to try to listen to you. But also, like, it's no one man doing it. It's like we're all, I believe in sovereignty. And I believe if you're
Right.
sovereign, you can make choices. And
Right. Although,
yeah.
so it is not one man, it is an entire enculturation, and cultures perpetuate themselves. Call it a habit. It's a habit that was
Hmm.
originally started with an original trauma, which was extreme and rapid climate change, where a huge swath of the world turned to desert very quickly, starting
Hmm.
around 4000 BC. And that caused people to stop having to farm, stop farming because you can't farm in those conditions, and turn to pastoralism. Pastoralism, like raising cows, led to sort of the rise of like a tribal leader, a strong man who could hoard all the resources in the form of cows. And when he started doing that, he wanted to pass them on to his sons. And that led to this system of men passing things down to their sons, which necessitated controlling women so you could be sure who your sons were, and then preventing women from having access to resources. So it,
Hmm.
and then it just became like a societal habit that
Hmm.
led to, intense misogyny and women getting stoned and their breasts cut off for adultery,
Hmm.
and prevented from leadership, prevented from accessing those resources, prevented from having our own sort of choices to make in life, and basically forced into one choice, which is domestic servitude, unpaid labor,
Hmm.
and motherhood have been like really the only choices women have had until the last 100 years when
Hmm.
feminism changed the world. And so now we have, you call it a privilege to be able to talk about these things. I call it a right of free speech. And the prerequisite to healing all these things, because there are so many countries in the world who are still in the grips of extreme patriarchy, where women aren't allowed to go to school, aren't allowed to drive, aren't allowed to like walk around by themselves, have to cover their whole bodies. And so we can see through those, societies what the extreme basis of patriarchy is. And then we see the sort of like traces of it that remain in the modern world. The misogyny that, women influencers and celebrities deal with, where just like they have to hire somebody to like delete their insulting and hateful comments. Men celebrities don't deal with that. Just what we all deal with, of walking around feeling afraid and having men sort of like con, you know condescend to us. And let me ask you, if every time you opened your wallet and took out a bill, you saw a woman's face, and there wasn't a single man who had ever led your country, and all of your history and all of your accomplishments had been sort of erased from history, like, would you feel okay? Would you feel okay with that? Like if there'd never been a male president, would you feel represented and like everything was fine and there's equal opportunity?
I mean, you must understand how difficult a question that is. And I think that I would never a man's face. I'm in a woman's world. But that's the really funny thing, Elisha, is that I feel like I grew up in that. Like in my house, it was just, I mean, it was a matriarchy. My mom held the power. My dad was a submissive
Mm,
and resentful man because of it. My
mm,
mom was controlling and dominant, and she was so stubborn in her own, like in her
mm,
masculine, in her
mm,
power, trying to lead the place, that she ended up developing cancer because she was so
mm,
stressed. She was such in dis-ease with regards to
mm,
my dad's inability to step up. So I
mm,
witnessed a home of a matriarchy.
mm,
yeah. And then you want to know, like in the past even few years, I've had conversations with my sisters because they talk about this as well. And I'm like,
mm,
guys, like I feel so fucking invalidated. It's insane. I feel like I'm being
mm.
castrated. I feel like I'm being emasculated. Um, and it like is like painful to try to like, yeah, I don't know. I grew up and there was no masculine representation for me. Who were all I saw were whipped husbands and women resentful for doing it. And like, but that was just like, it was just lazy, like men who just wanted to go out and provide and then go lock themselves away and drink and fucking until they had to wake up the next day. I don't feel masculine represented, if I'm being honest.
So whose fault is that? Is it
I
women
wouldn't say it's the patriarchies.
I would. Well, I would say that it's a reaction against the patriarchy, and so your mom, I think, is actually acting from her patriarchal self, not her matriarchal self. Like leadership for women is natural. When women were leading, things were peaceful, and it was a really long-lived, peaceful society. But women leading out of domineering energy, like your mother, that's patriarchy. So it's not about men and women. It's like you said about the out of balance toxic masculine. So your mother was exhibiting toxic masculine qualities, um, and that was like modeled by society. She saw that, but your dad, from what you said before, was also showing some toxic masculine properties by shaming you for being sensitive. Like that's
Right.
one of the most serious ways that patriarchy is maintained is by, the classic telling boys not to cry. What are you, a sissy? And this whole idea of castration and emasculation, like you would never say effemination. Like there's no equivalent for women. Like how do you like we're just women. Like you can't make us not a woman. Like
Right. You don't have
when
anything to
you're
cut off. That's the
right,
thing.
we don't have anything to cut
You have a
off.
receptive womb, a hole of receiving and birthing and creating. Men actually have a thing that you can cut off. I mean, I
Right, but what
understand
does
clits
that
are still
mean?
mutilated, but
Like how are you emasculated, and what does that make you? Does that make you a woman, and that's like a shameful thing? Like if masculinity is so fragile that you can be emasculated simply by a woman being in power, like that there's a problem with that. That's not like a strong quality.
I agree with you completely. And I think that men who are intimidated, quote unquote, by powerful leader women are not displaying healthy masculinity. Now, the thing is, the powerful feminine like leader is she gets to choose one of two mates, either a more powerful man that she
Mm,
respects who can lead him, or a more submissive man who she can play with but will eventually resent because he's not taking on a
mm.
more masculine role. So it's
What about
unavoidable. Like
equality? What about the third idea, equality?
equality is, yeah, why didn't God make us completely equal?
Not the equality and the same are not the same. So you and I can have an equal relationship where neither one of us is dominating the other and not be exactly the same, right?
right, yeah, I don't think dominating. Yeah, but no, it just I haven't seen it work. I don't, like I said, that what does that even mean? Because equality is not attractive, and that's one of the problems with equality, is that polarity is what's attractive, contrast is what's attractive. The good girl and the bad boy, that's attractive. Okay, maybe it's attractive because of wounding and patriarchal systems. Okay, yeah, maybe. But it's still what's present. And I'm just trying to label what is current and what I'm
Mm, mhm,
seeing
mhm.
more than like labeling. I'm just like, hey, this is what's going on.
And I
That's
guess
it.
I'm saying what I'm hoping for is to see us heal from that, because are those dynamics like fun and healthy? Like I've seen a lot of equal relationships work, and that doesn't mean that it's equal in every moment. That means we take turns. So maybe
Uh-huh.
right now you're the one who's on top and you're kind of pleasuring the other, and then later you switch off, and maybe tonight like you decide where to go to dinner and you pay, and then tomorrow I'll do that. Like I've seen that work a lot. And that's, I mean, I think these dominance and submissive relationships are the core of patriarchy, which is about oppressor and oppressed dynamics, this whole power over thing. And we're working all through that. But I think once we start healing our trauma and deconstructing these things, we won't have to constantly play this out, and we can just be ourselves and like not have to dominate each other.
Yeah, you're still saying that even in an equal partnership, though, there's switching happening, which means
Mm.
I'll take the powerful contrast, and then you'll take the powerful contrast, and then I'll take it. So we're even in an equal partnership, there's still decisions on who's going to take the lead in that moment, right?
Yeah,
Right, and
because
that's okay, right?
it makes sense to like it, and other times there's no need to take the lead. It's like, where are we
Uh,
going to go eat? How about this? How about this? And we both are like, yeah, let's go there. But that's
yeah,
how like pre-patriarchal or the hunter-gatherer societies that have survived into the modern era, they make a huge effort to sort of make fun of leaders, and they switch off being leaders depending on who's the most skilled in that area. So like if we're doing plumbing work and you're the plumber, I'm going to defer to you. Like you go, you do the plumbing thing. And
uh-huh.
so we switch off, and then when that plumbing thing is done, maybe I'm going to take the lead on something else. And so yeah, that's the way that sort of traditional people approached it, is like, let's not have anyone get stuck in a position of power. If anyone does that, we're going to make fun of them.
Huh. Sure. Yeah, and I'm down with the idea. I mean, we try to do that with presidents, right? Rotating
Mm,
power, and I
mhm,
know you
right.
understand that there hasn't been a lot of feminine representation, and but we do try to do rotational things, and I do agree. I think you're talking about like domains of expertise,
Mhm,
and like I have a particular domain, and even in my men's group that we're in, we have
mm,
rotating
mm,
like leadership, and like one of the guys in that group actually doesn't have a functioning cock, and so we have a lot of
mm,
talk and dialogue about what masculinity means irrespective of the genitalia as well. So yeah,
mm,
there are men out there that are like really still in strong healthy masculine energy without the genitals to back it up, and so that just means that it's an energetic. um,
mhm,
but yeah, the rotating power stuff, yes, I think that's great. And the one way I would wrap this up and make it grounded and practical is I would say that um, there's a difference between leading a woman and leading a relationship. And because the
mm,
relationship is a third entity, what I think that the masculine's role is in relationships is not to lead the woman, it's to lead the relationship. Because I actually want to trust that you have a degree of sovereignty and that the relationship is
mm,
serving your personal alignment.
mm,
And so when I'm constructing a relationship, writing up a proposal, being like, hey, I want to take you somewhere. But what's going to happen is there's a relationship, and that relationship is going to be
mm.
like our car, and I want to take you there in the vehicle. Do you
Okay.
mind if I drive the relationship this direction? And
Yes.
then you can stay perfectly sovereign in your space the whole time, attuning to your yeses and your nos in each moment. And I don't have to be like, hey, you come over here. I get to just say, hey, I think I'm going to put the relationship and move it in that direction. You down to come along? And then like that way it's not like I'm delegating your time or your body or something, and I'm telling you what to do. It's like you either agree to the relationship vision or you don't. It either serves you or it doesn't, and then we don't have to. Yeah, then we don't have to. Then it feels more balanced. Maybe I like balanced better than equal.
I'll go with balanced. So then, in order to make it balanced, maybe like when you're tired of driving and your eyes are closing, I'll drive, right? Like
Yeah,
Doesn't that feel good? Like that, isn't it a relief to know that you don't have to drive the whole way?
it is. But who is driving first?
Doesn't matter.
Generally, it's some
First,
many would say it does. I mean, what do you think about men? What do you think about splitting the bill? Date wants to court you and take you out. Like, are you down to split?
I think that the person who makes more money should pay more according to how much more they make. Because the issue is that, men's abilities and talents have been more rewarded by society, and women have been hampered not only by a constant lack of opportunity, and of mentorship, but also like hampered by the childcare responsibilities, which are sort of like unpaid labor that she's taking over, as well as more domestic cleaning responsibilities. And so that kind of creates this unequal opportunity for women to have income. And so in that case, it makes more sense for the man to, you know, pay extra if that's the case. Someone else might have a different, I mean, like, I'm doing
Yes.
well financially, so I often, will take a guy out to dinner,
Hmm.
and yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and so the man has more opportunity and privilege and access, so therefore he has more responsibility to take on the financial, which is exactly the same line of logic when it comes to, well, we have testosterone, we're the natural predators and the hunters, and we're stronger in that sense, so we are the ones who will dictate the control and flow of like resources more or less. And so it's like
But
we
that's
have the
what's
ability.
led to the problem. That is
Yes, but it's
essentially what has led to the problem is the might make right. The person who's the stronger and more aggressive is in control of the resources, which is why patriarchy is the opposite of sovereignty. So like the whole concept of kings, like a king was somebody who was your sovereign, meaning you weren't sovereign. The king could make you do anything. He could cut off your head, he could take your property, he could rape your partner. Like, what we want to get back to is people leading and controlling resources according to responsibility, as the grandmother would. Like, a grandmother isn't going to control resources in a way that's about her personal power. It's about making sure that all her grandkids are fed. And that's what we need to get back to get out of this bombing kids, destroying the
sure.
environment, some
Yeah.
people having a lot while other people don't. That's the core of patriarchy.
Yeah, and I think in order to do that, one of the things that we're going to have to do is, and I think you're probably doing this, is build businesses from scratch the way that we see the future in the business. Because the like, the what I think what we're being able to witness right now, we're seeing like a mirror of what is organic in our current like evolution cycle or like our human psyche. So we're witnessing society as like the algorithm that it's like an algorithm. So
Mm,
societal algorithm is reflecting back to us our current state. And so,
mm,
yeah, I agree that we need to change our state, and like we need to find a sort of. I think that the world is moving, and I know a lot of people that are moving from the competitive style of business to the collaborative style of business, which is a lot of what I'm hearing you say. Because I
yeah.
don't believe that might makes right, and I don't think nature does either. Because if I'm the
Mm,
tyrant, I'm going to get assassinated at the end of the day. And if enough people don't like the way you lead, you're out, period. And so there is like a natural filtration of the mob, right, that will cancel you if they don't like the way that you're leading. So you have to have a degree of integrity. And but the funny thing is that's like on the communal level, on the grand world level, you don't have to have jack shit integrity, right? You can be a part of.
mm,
I don't know what's going on. The psyops, the Illuminati, the
mm.
fucking whatever like strings are being pulled in order to make sure we're receiving information that's confusing us while they're taking control of more resources, probably colonizing Mars and fucking us off at the end of the day. But on the communal level, yeah, I'm all about empowering everybody to step into their personal dharma. I think everybody has a dharma.
Mm, mm,
Um, and my pathway is I think you clear your karma in relationships, in a union. Through
yes.
the one-on-ones aspect, can you clear for one another? And so I'm
Mm,
going to help support the clearing for you. You support clearing for me. And then we both, as a result of that, step into a more dharmic expression of
mm.
relationship, which is, well, now that we're kind of cleared up, how are we going to change the world and make it a better place, via our blueprint? And
I
to me, that's
totally agree.
sovereignty.
I let's end on that note because that's beautiful. That's beautifully said. And I just want to hold up my book. Before War on Marriage, Hierarchy, and Our Matriarchal Origins. It's really funny and sexy. That's the Minoans. They were like a very titty out, female led civilization with flushing toilets. And do you want to just say your website? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say first that it's such a pleasure to talk to you, that this was
Aw.
actually a really nice conversation. And I
Aw.
really I would love to do it again. And I think more
Oh.
people, I think this is one of the best dialogues I've ever had about this
Oh,
stuff.
I
So
think so
thank you.
too. I wish we could get the word out. I'm not good at marketing, but I really think this is, if for no other reason, just to have people talking about contentious topics without getting mad at each other is like the most important work we could do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So the easiest way to find me is actually on Facebook, just Zach Gallardo. I have a Facebook group called the Polarity Space. I'm a part of a greater group of a team that's called Tribe Live. Websites and stuff are still in development, but at fully_aligned is where you can find me on Instagram. But yeah, reaching out in a DM. I also have a podcast called Awaken Your King, and it has a lot of insights and stuff in there, some of the things that I teach in my story. Yes.
And mine is beforewar.com. And yeah, it was a great pleasure to talk to you, Zach. I think you're hot. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. And please tell your friends to tune in. And find me more men who want to do this, because then it'll keep going.
Okay. Oh, I would
Thanks.
love. I already know the guy. So,
Oh,
yes.
yay! Have fun. All
Cool.
right. Take care. Blessings,
Bye,
everyone.
Alicia.
Thanks
Take
for
care.
being with us. Bye.